Mach 3, 70,000 feet. A silver dart of titanium and steel outruns the sky itself. This was supposed to be America's ultimate bomber. It fly faster than a bullet, higher than any bomber before it, and yet it never dropped a single bomb in anger. Officially, Budget Kutz killed it. But the real story is stranger, more political, and far more revealing about the Cold War itself. This is the true story of the XB-70 Valkyrie, the fastest bomber ever built, and the mission that history quietly buried. Imagine a bomber so advanced, its own engineers called it a spaceship with wings. Now imagine watching it get cancelled before it ever went to war. 6 engines, 2 prototypes, billions of dollars, and a single tragic accident that would seal its fate in the sky over California. By the end of this story, you'll understand why the fastest bomber in history was doomed the moment it was designed. In 1954, the United States Air Force faced a problem. Its frontline bomber, the B-52, was powerful but slow and vulnerable to Soviet defenses. The Soviet Union was racing to build ever more capable jet interceptors and radar-guided missiles. America needed a bomber no defense could catch. The Air Force's answer was Weapon System Ulventenna, a bomber that would fly so high and so fast that interception would be impossible. In 1957, after fierce competition, North American Aviation won the contract. Their design would push aerospace engineering to its absolute limits. The goal was staggering: a bomber cruising at Mach 3 above 70,000 feet, carrying nuclear weapons deep into Soviet territory. At those speeds, the aircraft's own skin would heat past 400 degrees. Conventional aluminum would simply melt away. North Americans' engineers turned to an entirely new material system: brazed stainless steel honeycomb, built to survive the heat of sustained supersonic flight. No aircraft like it had ever been attempted. The XB-70 Valkyrie was about to become one of the boldest gambles in aviation history. Construction began at North American's Los Angeles plant in 1961. Every part of this aircraft demanded new engineering solutions. The delta wing spanned nearly 90 feet. Beneath it, 6 General Electric 9-3 engines were buried in a single wide duct. The most radical feature was invisible until the aircraft accelerated: wingtips that folded downward, trapping shockwaves beneath the aircraft for extra lift. This technique, called compression lift, let the shockwave itself support part of the aircraft's weight, a discovery years ahead of its time. By 1962, the program had already ballooned in cost. Each prototype was consuming resources far beyond original estimates. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara was already skeptical. He believed missiles, not manned bombers, were the future of nuclear deterrence. In 1961, the bomber program was cut. The Valkyrie would not enter mass production. Only a handful of research aircraft would ever fly. Even as its combat future dimmed, engineers pressed forward. The aircraft that remained would still make history in the sky. The Valkyrie's canard, a small second set of wings near the nose, gave pilots precise control at speeds no aircraft had sustained before. Its air intakes were carefully shaped to slow incoming supersonic air before it reached the engines, a delicate balance of physics and metal. Inside, the cockpit resembled something from a spacecraft. Pilots wore modified pressure suits in case of sudden decompression at extreme altitude. The fuel itself needed to survive intense heat. Special high-temperature JP6 fuel was developed specifically for the Valkyrie's demanding mission. Every rivet, every panel seam was engineered to withstand friction heating that turned the aircraft's skin into an oven at cruising speed. At 189 feet long, the Valkyrie was longer than many airliners, yet built to slice through the sky at 3 times the speed of sound. Its top speed, Mach 3 on, meant it could outrun almost every fighter and missile system in the world at the time. But complexity came at a price. 6 engines, exotic materials, and untested aerodynamics meant delays and mounting costs at every stage. By the time it was ready to fly, the Valkyrie was no longer just an aircraft. It had become a symbol of Cold War ambition. On September 21, 1964, the first Valkyrie prototype, Av-1, was finally ready to take to the air. Test pilots, Al White and Joseph Cotton, took the controls for that historic first flight, lifting off from Palmdale toward Edwards Air Force Base. The flight revealed both promise and problems. Over the following months, engineers pushed the aircraft further, testing higher altitudes and faster speeds with each flight. On October 14, 1965, the Valkyrie finally reached Mach 3, sustaining triple the speed of sound for over half an hour. A second prototype, Av-2, joined the test program, this one fitted with improvements based on lessons learned from the first aircraft. NASA and General Electric joined the program too, eager to study the Valkyrie's unique sonic boom and high-speed aerodynamics. Every flight generated mountains of new data. The Valkyrie was proving invaluable not as a weapon, but as a flying laboratory, but the program remained fragile. With no combat future, every dollar spent had to be justified purely by scientific value. By early 1966, the Valkyrie program had shifted almost entirely toward research, supporting American work on a future supersonic airliner. On June 8, 1966, General Electric arranged a photo flight, gathering several company aircraft alongside the Valkyrie for a formation portrait. Flying close formation with the massive delta-winged bomber was NASA test pilot Joe Walker, piloting a small F-104N chase jet. The turbulent airflow near the Valkyrie's wingtip caught the smaller jet by surprise, rolling it dangerously close to the bomber's massive wing. In seconds, the F-044 collided with the Valkyrie's tail fins. Both aircraft were fatally damaged high above the California desert. The Valkyrie spiraled out of control and crashed into the desert. Pilot White ejected and survived. Co-pilot Carl Cross did not. NASA pilot Joe Walker, one of America's most respected test pilots, also died in the collision. The program had lost far more than an aircraft, with one of only 2 prototypes destroyed. The Valkyrie's already limited future grew even more uncertain in the months that followed. The official story blames budget cuts, but the true cancellation began years earlier in the skies over the Soviet Union. In May 1960, a U-2 spy plane was shot down by a Soviet surface-to-air missile at over 60,000 feet. That single event proved something devastating. Altitude alone no longer guaranteed safety. Missiles could now reach where bombers once felt untouchable. At the same time, America's intercontinental ballistic missile program was advancing rapidly. Minuteman missiles offered a cheaper, faster, unstoppable alternative. Why spend billions on a single manned bomber, vulnerable to accidents and enemy defenses, when missiles could strike in 30 minutes at a fraction of the cost? Robert McNamara championed this new doctrine. Nuclear deterrence would rest on missiles and submarines, not vulnerable high-flying aircraft. The Valkyrie's staggering cost sealed its fate. Each aircraft ran into the tens of millions at a time when missiles promised far more for far less. So the bomber was cancelled twice over. First, as a weapon rendered obsolete by missiles, then as a research program too costly to justify alone. The June 1966 crash only confirmed what budget planners already believed. The program's remaining value could no longer outweigh its risk. The last XB-70 continued flying for NASA research until 1969, gathering priceless data on sustained supersonic flight. Its final flight ended not in combat, but in a quiet delivery to a museum, where it remains today. The data it generated shaped decades of future research, from titanium construction techniques to early supersonic transport studies. Today, the surviving Valkyrie sits preserved in a museum hangar, the only reminder of a bomber that outran its own era. It never fired a shot, never faced an enemy, yet its influence quietly shaped every fast, high-altitude aircraft that followed. The XB-70 Valkyrie wasn't cancelled because it failed. It was cancelled because the world around it changed faster than it could fly. Missiles made it strategically unnecessary. Cost made it politically unsustainable. Tragedy made it impossible to ignore the risk. But for a few remarkable years, it was the fastest, highest-flying bomber the world had ever seen, a triumph even in defeat. The Valkyrie's story reminds us that in the Cold War, the fastest aircraft in the sky could still lose the race